Is that what the Bible said? Everybody else is a giant. Every big church around here, it's just, we can't do, but they're so anointed, and she's this, and a little grasshopper. That's our problem. It is about some of these kinds of things. If we're going to move off center, then we have to do some things. And of course, having been around a little bit with Dr. Keith, he's like me, he always gives you homework, gives you assignments, because he realizes me just telling you the stuff's not going to do you any good unless you go do something. Minor and I, for years, we have counseled people, talked with people, and we tell them, now we think this is what you should do. They come back next time, did you do that? Nope. But talk to me some more. And after just a little while, that gets real thin. Because we realize this thing is not going anywhere, because the only person in the world that can do anything about it is you. And if you don't do anything, then we can't do anything for you. No matter if we told you the exact right thing to do, which we occasionally do. We prophesy in part, sometimes it's not always perfect. I'm not saying that, but I think there's enough truth and enough wisdom there that if you can get a hold of that and begin to move in the right direction, God will guide you. But you've got to move. I want my life to be different. Well, the good news and the bad news is there's only one person that can do anything about it, and that's you. The good news is you don't have to wait on anybody else. It's not dependent upon anybody else. And the bad news is it's not dependent upon anybody else. So he spoke about 3 laws of personal transformation, the law of personal development. And this is where you say, okay, we're going to be a church that's going to do this. Okay, let's talk about it. No, let's find out about it. Let's make a plan about it. Let's do it. I mean, whatever that thing is in your life or the life of this church, whatever that is, there has to be some development. I don't think maybe I know enough about that. Hello? Go talk to somebody that knows something you don't know. Buy a book, listen to a tape, do something. Let somebody speak to you, ask for prayer. I mean, any of these things would be good things, good places to start. I promise you, if you came to anybody in the ministry here in our church and said, this is crazy, because I've had this conversation. I know you're going to think this is crazy, but this is what's in my heart. Will you pray with me about it? The answer will always be yes. Well, I just don't think you all encourage me enough. I don't even know what you're talking about. I don't even know what you're thinking about. You got to open your mouth. You got to say something. You got to tell me what it is. What do you want me to agree with you about? It's like the blind man coming, and Jesus said, what do you want? He'd think, what do you mean, what I want? He said, obviously, I'm a blind man. No, he said, I want to know what you want. Maybe you want a seeing eye dog. Cain, maybe that's all you want. I don't know, what do you want? What do you want? And he began to voice what he wanted, and God said, I'll take care of that. I'll help you with that. But you have to open your mouth. You begin to tell the Lord those things. And law of personal development, the law of conditioning, which is about what you keep hearing and hearing and hearing and hearing and hearing. Maybe if you're hearing the wrong things, you need to turn the channel or something like that. Listen to something else. Make some decisions about what you're hearing, because let's face it, we all become a product, do we not, somewhat of the things that are around, the environment that we're around all the time. This one guy named Jim Spillman, funny tape. He got a great healing ministry, but there was a time he was just a good old Baptist guy. And he was, tongues of the devil and no healing and all that. And he's working at a Christian university. And he'd get off work every day, turn his radio on, and it's Catherine Kuhlman every day. Hello, I've been waiting for you. He thought it was personal. As only Catherine Kuhlman could do. He said, I would argue with that woman all the way home every day. But the next day I'd turn it back on again. And he said, I finally told my wife. She says, what's the matter with you? You come home every day, you're all steamed up. What's your problem? I said, it's this woman on the radio. It's Catherine Coleman. And she thought for a minute. She says, why don't you just turn it off? I don't know. I just keep going back every day. She's waiting for you. It might be the most encouraging thing that happened to him. I don't know. Somebody's waiting for me. Praise the Lord. Well, finally, he goes to this church, and the pastor says, now we're going to do something way out of left field here for this church. Said, we're having a special guest minister. And of course, they announce it. He throws a fit because he's so steamed up about her. He's so... it's a bad mistake, but of course he thought, I'm on the staff, I've got to go. I mean, what can I do? I mean, I got to go. And of course, she points him out. You, in the balcony up there. And he said, I was in the balcony, it was just where you could see, but where they couldn't see you. He's hiding from this little woman up there. He's hiding from her, he thinks. So there's someone way up there, and points right at him. And of course, then he backs down, so like that. And there's a lady right next to him, said, it's Miss Coleman, it's him, he's right here, points him out. So now he's embarrassed. He's got to go down front. He's 6'4", 6'5". She's this little wispy looking little thing. And of course, he's been watching her kill people up front. You know, where she prays for them, bang, they just fall down dead. He's a big man. He said, I ain't falling down. I don't care what she says. And of course, you know what happens. I heard the Lord say that. I heard a guy say that recently, that he was talking about that he was at some sort of a meeting, and it was a youth meeting. And by the way, it was a youth meeting kind of a thing. And they had a mosh pit, and he just dived out in the middle of them. They just passed him around and all this stuff. And he said, now, I know some of you can't get that. And he said, but I heard somebody say, well, I'll never do that. God just took that as a personal challenge. He's probably going to get you especially. That's the kind of way it was with this guy named Jim Spielman. Of course, she prayed for him, and this great big guy's laying on the floor. He gets up 3 times thinking he's going to be strong. And finally, he wakes up, and she's just kind of kneeling down, praying over him, begins to prophesy over him about this healing ministry. And then he goes on and has this great healing ministry where blind eyes don't just come open, they are created. Eye sockets that have no eyes, that kind of stuff happened. But his start was because he'd been conditioned. This is not right. It's not for today. We don't do that. But for whatever his strange reason was, he kept listening to Catherine Coleman, hearing the message, God heals, God heals, God does miracles, God's still working today. And he kept doing that, and he finally got to a place that it became real to him. And you see, I think that's the kind of thing that I heard in all this law of conditioning. And then the last thing he said was, we need to change our story. You ever heard that little thing? It's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Well, that's good if it's the right story. If it's not the right story, probably need to change the story, whatever it's supposed to be. I got another scripture I want you to look at, and I'm going to tie this together. Proverbs chapter 24, verses 3 and 4. Proverbs 24. I'm going to read it here first out of this. It's the New King James Version of the Bible. And then I got a couple others I want to read out of. Some of you may have read this before. Probably a lot of you have, but it's stuck in my mind. Through wisdom, a house is built. If we're talking about your house, your life, this church, your business, whatever it is, through wisdom, a house is built, and by understanding, it's established. By knowledge, the rooms are filled with all precious and pleasant riches. 3 big things that the Proverbs, writer of Proverbs talks about a lot: wisdom, and knowledge and understanding. He said it takes all those. If you want to build a strong house, you got to have wisdom, you got to have knowledge, you got to have understanding. Now, in the New Living Translation, it said, a house is built by wisdom and becomes strong through good sense. Through knowledge, its rooms are filled with all sorts of precious riches and valuables. Let's go one step further. The Living Bible says it this way. A successful enterprise is built by wise planning, becomes strong by common sense, and profits wonderfully by keeping abreast of the facts. Knowledge. Now this, I don't know if you realize this, any of you that are in business, this is probably the greatest business plan in the entire world. Probably everybody that's ever been successful has done these things. They made a good plan, they used some common sense, and they kept up with things. And that kept their business going, whether that's General Electric, Ford Motor Company, or whoever it is. Any kind of an enterprise, it takes those kinds of things for that to happen. This week, I'm thinking about all this sort of thing. Thinking about that key little thing about personal development, I thought, well, what else needs to develop for a group like this? What do we need to do? And one was that what I would call organizational development. What we do as a church, when you got a family and it's just you by yourself, you're living by yourself, you don't have to plan too much, you just slop in and out anytime you want to. You get married, everything changes. I'm promising you, everything changes at that point. Now, you know what else? What the next big change is? It's the baby. I mean, that radically changed your life. Is that right? I mean, forever. Thank you. Forever changes your life.